Have you ever received a text that didn't have too much context behind it, but you just know from the words and tone of that text that something was really wrong? In 2018, I received one of these texts from my mom. All it said was 2 words, "I'm sad." And this is a woman who I've never seen cry. I've never seen her in like a down and depressed or sad negative state. So as soon as I received that text, I knew something was really wrong. So I called her and found out what happened. My aunt, who was her sister, was actually diagnosed with late-stage lung cancer. And a few months after that, she unfortunately passed away. And like 6 months after that, my grandmother, who was my mom's mom, also passed away from the same type of cancer. Now in 2000, Kevin Durant's Aunt Pearl, also passed away from lung cancer. I believe at one point she was living with his mom Wanda, and she would make like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for him. They would spend a lot of time together, and sadly, that lung cancer also took a life. And unlike me, Kevin Durant went on to become a Hall of Famer, one of the maybe top 20 best players in the NBA ever. He had an entire colorway for his signature shoes dedicated to his Aunt Pearl, and now Nike is bringing back a shoe that started it all. Nike Zoom KD4 Aunt Pearl. The KD4 Aunt Pearl is dropping on October 25th for $130 in the United States. And I've always been wondering if Nike was ever going to pro-tro any of the Kevin Durant shoes. I don't know if his signature shoes really has as much like pull and hype and popularity to warrant a pro-tro like the Kobe's have. But I think the KD4s, I think a lot of people love this shoe, even though it might not be the best performing Kevin Durant shoe ever. I think a lot of people would welcome a pro-troed version of this shoe, especially when there's been so many great colorways, like the Nerfs that they brought back this year, like the Weathermans as well. A lot of people like the Galaxies also. I think the KD4s is deserving of a pro-tro. And the KD4 was actually the first shoe that featured the Aunt Pearl colorway, and first impressions of this shoe. Pink is a pretty hard color to pull off for me. I don't really have any like pink clothing. I have like 2 pink t-shirts. So obviously the point of this shoe is for Cancer. So even though I might not be able to wear it like casually or pull it off that easily, I totally appreciate what this shoe is meant to do. In terms of just the silhouette itself, I think I like the KD3 silhouette slightly better than the KD4s. But the KD4s, out of all Kevin Durant shoes, it's up there as one of the better ones. And of course the Aunt Pearl colorway and series overall, it is just one of the most special, I don't know what to call it, colorway lines for all basketball sneakers. In the upper of the KD4, it is Hyperfuse. So essentially what that is 3 layers. So on the first layer, you have the skeleton or the bones of the material. And then the second layer, you get mesh. And then the third layer consists of this outer shell. And if you haven't touched this material before, at least on the outer shell, feels kind of like, hard to describe, it's kind of like synthetic tinfoil. Now in hand, the material doesn't feel like super premium, can feel pretty cheap. But one good thing about this material is in terms of the durability and how it looks, you just don't really notice any creasing. Even after wearing the shoe, after playing in it, you can almost pass it off as brand new. And then on the second half of the shoe, you get that synthetic kind of patent leather material with that very unique pearl design. You see that on the tongue as well. And then right in the middle of the tongue, you see that KL symbol, who was an American basketball coach. She passed away from cancer. And the KL Cancer Fund is a non-profit organization, meaning to help all women that are going through cancer. And perhaps the most distinct thing about the KD4, it is this crossfoot strap. It is officially Nike's adaptive fit system. And if you're in doubt, it actually says adaptive fit in the strap. Now this one is special. So it has the phrase, "in memory of Aunt Pearl, who inspired us all to continue the fight for a cure." And then on the strap itself, you see a black swoosh that is like printed onto the strap. And on the medial side of the shoe, where the strap begins, you'll see the words Tia and Tina, who are Kevin Durant's cousins. And I'll have more to say on sizing and comfort later. However, this strap, even though it feels kind of flimsy and thin, it actually does a pretty decent job of kind of locking your feet in place. And then moving up the tongue, you see this mesh tongue, provides some ventilation there. And this shoe does not come with any extra laces, just pink laces. And honestly, for this shoe, I think pink laces probably makes the most sense. Usually I would complain that they don't give you extra laces, but I think the theme of the shoe is pretty obvious. And then on the lace tips, you'll also see a nod to Aunt Pearl. Now the KD4s comes with a Phylon midsole with a Zoom Air unit just in the forefoot. And the Phylon for the shoe, it is actually decently dense. I can't remember compared to like the Phylon and 2012 KD4s, how it compares. But just on feet, on my feet anyway, it felt pretty dense. And I will say overall cushioning, if you're playing basketball in the KD4s, in 2024, you can really feel, in contrast to a lot of modern day shoes, just how kind of firm and low profile it is. For my bad and old knees, it's a little too firm for me. You really can't feel too much cushioning and like responsiveness on the shoe. There's only zoom air in the forefoot, none on the heel. So overall cushioning wise for a performance sneaker, yeah, it's just kind of old, a little bit outdated. And in terms of the outsole, you see these Thunderbolt designs on the traction. That's obviously a reference to Kevin Durant's Oklahoma City Thunder days. And at the very top of the toe box, you'll see Barbara, who is Kevin Durant's grandmother's name. And then Tony Man right underneath, that is Kevin Durant's brother. His name is Tony, but they call him Tony Man. On the left shoe, on the medial side, you'll see the phrase work hard. And on the right shoe, in the same position, you'll see the words stay focused. And then on this little cutout, you'll see the phrase designed and engineered to the exact specifications of Kevin Durant. Well, Kevin Durant's signature. And then at the very bottom of the outsole where the heel is, you'll see Seat Pleasant. That is a place in Maryland. That is where Kevin Durant grew up. And then finally, you'll see the words Big Chucky on the heel. Now, if you didn't know, Big Chucky was Kevin Durant's AAU basketball coach. He unfortunately was shot and murdered at the age of 35, which is the reason why Kevin Durant started wearing 35 when he entered the NBA. So overall, just a lot of detail on the outsole itself. And in terms of the traction of the outsole, I think it's pretty good traction. It is quite sticky. On a well-maintained gym, it really does provide quite a bit of grip. I will say this kind of translucent or semi-translucent material can attract dust. So on like a pretty dirty and less well-maintained gym, you might have to wipe your shoes a few times. However, overall, I will say it's a very decently traction shoe. Traction is the most important thing for me when I play basketball. So I do have pretty high standards for traction. And I think the KD4s, they do pass. Now, in terms of outdoor use, you could play outdoors in these. I think it'll perform well. The traction patterns are like super thin, so it's hard for like little rocks and dust to get caught between the traction pattern. However, in terms of durability for this rubber, yeah, probably wouldn't recommend it if you want like a long-lasting outdoor shoe. I think this outsole outdoors would get ruined pretty quickly. Now, unfortunately, the insole of the shoe is just glued so tightly into the shoe, like it's life dependent on it. So I'm not gonna take it out, but it is generic. Pretty garbage insoles, nothing special, doesn't add to the comfort. In the box of the shoe, nothing too special, a black Kevin Durant box, his signature on the side, and that's it. Now in terms of sizing, fit, and lockdown, I am a wide and flat footer. For KD4s, I stick true to size. One thing that a lot of wide footers complain about for Kevin Durant's shoes is just how narrow the silhouette is. KD4 is a pretty narrow shoe. However, for me, if I'm playing basketball in them, which I do for KD4s, I don't really wear it casually or anything. I do prefer a very snug and tight fit. The materials will break in after some time, so it might seem pretty snug at first, even if you have wide feet. But I found that after breaking it in, playing in it for a while, it does break in pretty nicely. Now, in terms of overall containment and lockdown, like I said, this strap actually works pretty well. This shoe also has a decent outrigger, so that also helps with lateral side-to-side movement. Now, this material does provide a good enough job of keeping my foot in place, even if you do very hard and explosive movements. It'll keep your foot in place. And one thing I will say, the ankle collar area is not like super well padded. You might experience a little bit of heel slippage. I didn't experience too much, but there were times I did feel it a little bit, but overall it's not a huge problem. And in the midfoot area, it also has a TPU shank plate, so that helps with torsional rigidity as well as kinetic energy return. So it prevents your shoe from like twisting and bending too easily. And the heel counter also works decently. So in terms of overall like containment and support, I feel like this shoe does a pretty good job. I will say I'm a light player, so if you're like 300 pounds and you're stopping on a dime, especially these side-to-side movements, I don't think it'll be a problem, but you might have a slightly different experience. But for me, I've never felt kind of in danger when I'm cutting or like driving or running fast in a KD4. And in terms of just overall comfort as a shoe itself, walking around, it's pretty lightweight. Again, like I said before, it's quite flat to the ground, so it doesn't feel like you're kind of walking on pillows or anything. But I do think if you really wanted to, you could just wear the shoe casually or like doing some light exercises. You don't have to play ball in them. I think comfort-wise, you won't really have too much of a problem. Usually I would give a casual and retro shoe a sole score, but for a basketball performance sneaker, slow scores don't really make sense. The metrics don't work as well. But I do have a final verdict of the KD4 Arm Pearl. Performance-wise, I think there's better shoes in 2024 that just has slightly better cushioning, slightly softer and more plush, more responsive as well, but also maintains that type of firmness and balance that you need to really explode off your basketball sneakers and really provide a very supported and contained shoe. So if I was just choosing a basketball shoe to play in, a KD4 probably wouldn't be my choice, but this is the important thing. The ARM Pearl is just slightly more special. As corny as it may sound, when I read about how ARM Pearl also passed away from lung cancer, a cancer that claimed the lives of my aunt, my grandmother, and actually my uncle from like 20 years ago, well, I didn't really know too well, so even though I wouldn't necessarily wear the shoe on court for performance, but the appreciation for this colorway and what it started, for me personally, it's legendary. So that's it. Thanks for watching. Soul Inclined. Let me know what you think of the Nike KD4 ARM Pearl. Like, subscribe, comment, all the good stuff. And remember, tomorrow may never come, so wear your shoes.